Kimchi stew, or kimchi찌게, is such a popular and everyman's meal. You can find it at so many places in Korea. Every restaurant, from the corner joint to even some high-end ones, has their own recipe, and everyone has their own version that they cook at home or that they grew up eating. Kimchi stew can be really thick without a lot of broth, or it can be closer to a soup. It can have pork shoulder or belly, or canned tuna in oil. A lot of times spam as well, or even sometimes sari, which is a small fatty fish common in Korean and Japanese cuisine. That fattiness or richness is balanced out really well by the spicy and tangy flavors of the kimchi, which I think is a really important aspect of kimchi stew to get right. So today I'm going to show you a version that's kind of in the middle in terms of consistency between what you'd think of as a stew and a soup. And this one is going to have spam for the richness, and I've kept the ingredients on the simple side so you don't have to buy all these big packages or sauces that you may not use very often. This is something like what I would go to as an ordinary weeknight meal. Nothing too complicated. Keeping it relatively simple and not too stimulating or salty in terms of flavor. So, I've got this can of spam here. I find that the regular version might be slightly too fatty, so I usually go with light, but feel free to use what you like. If you press on the diagonal edges like this, it comes out easier. I'm going to cut this up into pieces that I can bite into later, like this, because I like having the big chunks in there, but you can go smaller. I have half of a big yellow onion here. I'm cutting along the grain so the pieces stay intact even after cooking. But we want it to be rather soft at the end, so go for thin slices. The onion is going to add some depth and especially sweetness, so use a bit less if you don't like sweetness. I've got about a stalk of green onion here, which I'm going to cut up at an angle, just to try to make it slightly prettier. You can and should use the white part of the stalks as well. I just happen to have used them already elsewhere. I got a nice big clove of garlic, which I'm going to crush up. Now for the tofu. For kimchi stew, I recommend the firm kind from a Korean supermarket. Japanese tofu from the Japanese supermarket is also fine if you can't find a Korean one. I'm cutting it into slices just as big as the spam. My wife likes a little bit of spice, so I'm adding 2 spicy Korean chilies that I keep frozen. These can be very spicy, so be careful. Alright, now let's make the seasoning. I'm using a cube of sugar, which is a teaspoon. You need chili powder, but make sure you get the Korean kind. It's great if it's fine ground, like this one, but coarse is also okay. I'm using a tablespoon here. Next is a tablespoon of soy sauce. Go for a Korean or a Japanese brand. Now let's get that garlic mixed in too. Add a stock cube for a little extra something. I'm using a combination beef and seafood one, but you can also use a chicken stock cube, that's completely fine. Ideally, this dish would be made with a stock made from anchovies and kombu, which is kind of the Korean equivalent of what a dashi is in Japanese cooking. But I think the theme is let's keep it simple for today. Now for the kimchi. The most important thing is to use well-fermented or sour kimchi. If you leave your kimchi in the regular fridge for a few weeks, you'll notice it'll get more and more sour. When it's at the point of like a sour pickle, then you know it's ready for kimchi stew. This is store-bought kimchi that I've given enough time. The ones in the Korean supermarkets tend to be pretty good these days. I'm measuring out around 14 ounces here. Make sure you're not leaving behind too much of the liquid. A lot of the flavor will come from there, so make sure you get some liquid along with the kimchi. I've got myself a 3-quart saucepan here, but pretty much any old pot will do, as long as it's not too shallow or too tall. I'm using a bit of oil and giving the onions a head start on medium heat for a couple of minutes. Then the kimchi can go in. We want to get these guys slightly softened up. Okay, that looks good. Add 3 cups of water and the seasoning mix we made earlier, and make sure there's no lumps. Bring it up to high heat. I'm giving it a second to let that water heat up, and adding my spam and tofu. Once it boils, reduce to medium-low heat, and let it boil for about maybe 7 to 10 minutes. You'll notice the flavors starting to change. You want to give it enough time for the onions and kimchi to release their flavor, but not so long that the onions get mushy. I let this boil for around 10 minutes, and in that time the flavors have really come together. Give it a taste at this point and season it to your taste with salt and a small amount of pepper. If you have traditional Korean soy sauce for soup, now is the time to use it, but salt is okay here since we added a bit of soy sauce earlier. Let's add in the green onion and optional peppers too. If you're feeling fancy, you can leave aside a third of the green onion for garnish later. Let it boil for another minute or so, and we're done. Now I'm gonna spoon it out into a big soup bowl and try to make it pretty. There we go. Sprinkle that green onion on top. A fried egg goes pretty well with kimchi stew. Add some cooked rice, and that's a cozy, comforting meal I'd take any day of the week. It feels like home. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions. Subscribe to see more videos like this. Bye!